Okay, so today, good morning to all. Today's session is about the magnetic materials for power electronics. And also we will see some design procedures, how to design a high frequency inductor. So for any magnetic material, there are some desirable characteristics that include high relative permeability. One second. Meeting it up. High relative permeability, high saturation flux density, low coercivity, high electrical resistivity, high Curie temperature, etc. Also, the eddy current and hysteresis losses should be very less. In this regard, when you're thinking about a Curie temperature, that is quite important when we're designing a magnetic component. The Curie temperature is that temperature above which our component will lose or magnetic material will lose its property. In general, we could classify the magnetic materials into three groups. One is diamagnetic, paramagnetic, and ferromagnetic. As we all know, for a diamagnetic material, relative permeability will be less than 1. For a ferromagnetic material, it will be quite high, in the range of 10 to 1 lakh. A conventional BH curve of these materials is shown here. So you could see, since the relative permeability of the ferromagnetic material is quite high, you could easily magnetize such material. But such material also poses one problem, that it may lose it. I mean, it may get into saturation after some time. So if you give a lot of, if you increase the magnetizing force, after some time you cannot magnetize the material. So we will reach into the saturation region. That means we have a nonlinear operation. Similarly, apart from the saturation, there is a linear region of operation. So we could design our magnetic material to operate in this linear region where the magnetizing force required is quite small. So among this ferromagnetic material, that we can classify basically into two groups. One is hard magnetic material, another is a soft magnetic material. Hard in the sense, the magnetic material, which is quite difficult to magnetize and difficult to demagnetize. That materials are known to be the hard magnetic material. They will have a wide hysteresis loop, and the coercive force is also quite high. So such ferromagnetic hard materials are basically used for electrical machining. For example, a permanent magnet in brushless and synchronous motors. But when it comes to the soft magnetic material, the soft in the sense we could easily magnetize and demagnetize. So such materials can be used for very high frequency applications. So they have a very narrow hysteresis loop compared to the hard magnetic material, very low coercive force required, and used in almost all power electronics applications. So the soft magnetic materials, some of the materials include ferrite core, amorphous core, powder iron core, nanocrystalline core, etc. So one of the widely used magnetic material, soft magnetic material, is the ferrite core. As you've seen here, the ferrite cores are available in different shapes. For example, this is a ferrite bed. You may be familiar with the ferrite bed, which is usually used for our power supply, for example, laptop charger, etc. If you see the laptop charger, before the connection, there will be a small projection. That is nothing but a ferrite bed is installed, which is acting as a EMI suppression filter, EMI suppression. So that is the and you can have a ferrite rod, and you may have a toroidal ferrite core, you may have double E core, ETD core, C core, etc. So in different shape, you will the ferrite cores are available, and we will see some of the characteristics of the ferrite core in detail. So as I told, the ferrite core is the widely used magnetic material for inductors and transformers in power electronics. They are basically made up of iron oxide, and also sometimes iron oxide in combination with some of the metals like manganese, magnesium, nickel, zinc, etc. So among the ferrite core, depends upon this material grade. We could see a few key points. One is the saturation flux density. So this is the flux density at which the core gets saturated. And for ferrite core, the saturation flux density is in the range of 0.25 to 0.45 Tesla. Usually in the modern data sheet, there's a saturation flux density will be given in the Tesla. But if you are following some old textbook, it will be given in another unit called Gauss. So usually 1 Tesla is equal to 10,000 Gauss. So that conversion you may require to use depends upon the data sheet which we are using. So the saturation flux density of the ferrite core is quite small. It is in the range of 0.25 to 0.45 Tesla. They have high resistivity and lower eddy current losses and as well as the hysteresis losses. And one important thing is that it have a very low Curie temperature. That means as the system temperature increases, this magnetic property reduces. So if you design an inductor considering a temperature, ambient temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, so as the converter or a power electronics converter is started to work, the temperature of the system increases. So the inductance value also reduces because the flux density started to reduce as the temperature increases. For a typical ferrite core, the Curie temperature is around 200 degrees Celsius. You may feel it's quite high, but even if you reach up to 100 kilohertz, 100 degree or 80 degree, the magnetic flux density reduces considerably. So for a high temperature application, you cannot use ferrite core. If you are using a ferrite core, you have to be quite careful while fixing the maximum flux density which is required for your application. We will see those things in an example. Even though it is a iron oxide with a different metal, in general or most popularly, there is a two class of ferrite core. One is manganese zinc and another is nickel zinc. If your application required to operate at very high switching frequency, that is more than a 1 megahertz range, then the most preferable ferrite core is nickel zinc ferrite core. And 10 years back, operating a power converters or power supply in the range of 1 megahertz is quite difficult, but now it is not something which is not realizable. It is easily realizable nowadays because of the invention of gallium nitride based devices. 1 decade ago, we have only silicon based power switches, whether it is a MOSFET or IGBT, etc. We have only silicon based thing. Now we have a wide band gap based power switches that include silicon carbide as well as GaN, gallium nitride. And if you see a power supply based on the gallium nitride, definitely the switching frequency will be in the range of 1 to 2 megahertz. So in that case, the nickel zinc ferrite core is the most preferred one. Apart from 1 megahertz, if you are operating in a few kilohertz, 100 kilohertz, less than 100 kilohertz or 200 kilohertz, the manganese zinc ferrite core is a most suitable one. Even the cost also quite less. So for less than 1 megahertz application, you could use manganese zinc ferrite core. As I told, the ferrite cores are available in different shape. So some of the commonly available ferrite core in our local market, that I just put it here. One is pot core. This is going to be the pot core. You can see from the shape, it is quite circular in nature. And this is widely, most popular double core. You could see it have 3 limbs, and each limb is a square shape. And there is something in between pot core and the double core, that is going to be the PQ core. Compared to the double core, you can see the middle limb is cylinder, and the other 2 limbs are having some curvature. That means this kind of core will have very less leakage fluxes. The flux linkage will be quite good, and the leakage fluxes are very small. So this kind of PQ core can be most used for the transformer design. The transformers are not meant for storing energy. They need to transfer energy. So we have to reduce the leakage. So the PQ core is something which is most preferable for such application. So apart from EE core, there is a ETD core also available in our local market. The difference is very small. The middle limb is cylinder, whereas other two limbs are similar to the EE core. And also we have a toroidal core and U or C core. And toroidal core, you have to be very careful while using a toroidal core for our power electronics application. One thing is that making an inductor with a toroidal core is not advisable, because inductors are meant to store energy during a portion of switching cycle. So in that case, if you are using a toroidal core, there is a high chance this toroidal core may get saturated, because we cannot provide an air gap. The only way to provide an air gap is cut the toroidal core somewhere here, so you can provide an air gap, then wind the conductors on it. So as a EMI suppression element or a filter element, you could use a toroidal core, but as a energy storing element, you should not use a toroidal core, especially ferrite toroidal core. Okay, there are other toroidal core which can be used for inductor design, which have a distributed air gap. This fellow don't have any air gap. If you wanted to provide an air gap, you need to break it. So I already told we have to be quite careful about the temperature dependency on the temperature behavior of the ferrite core. It have very low Curie temperature, and the maximum flux density, we call it as a D saturation flux density, for a ferrite core is in the range of 0.25 Tesla to 0.45 Tesla. So that means around 4,500 Gauss in lower temperature. So let us assume that we are making some power electronics converter, a buck converter or boost converter or an inverter in Tiruchirappalli, where ambient temperature in summer may be cross more than 40 degrees. So if you choose the highest possible D saturation value, that is around 0.45 Tesla for your design, that is actually coming around 0 degrees Celsius. But if you choose something around 0.42 or something at 40 degrees Celsius, and if you make the design, once the converter started to work, once the current flowing through the winding, it started to heat up. So as the temperature increases, if you don't have a forced cooling, easily our temperature goes up to this range, 70 to 85 degrees Celsius. So in that time, you could see whatever you designed, when you are designing your converter or inductor, you have taken the desaturation value as 0.42, but once you started to operate, our temperature in the system increased to 80 degrees or 70 degrees. So our Bsat has rapidly go down. So it comes to around 0.32 or something. That means the inductance value drop. So that need to be taken into account while designing a ferrite based inductor, because its thermal stability is poor. So another famous or widely used core is the powder core. Powder core is basically available in the toroidal shape and also in doubling shape. So if you see the powder cores are basically made up of the iron alloys, the powders of iron alloys, which are compressed together. While compressing, we will be putting insulating materials in between the powders. The powders as well as the insulating materials are compressed together to make the powder core. So once you have insulating material inside the core itself, that have an impact of reducing the relative permeability, because you are increasing the reluctance of your path. So once you increasing the reluctance of the path, it is equivalent to adding an air gap, physical air gap, even though the insulating material have a somewhat higher permeability than the air gap permeability. But in fact, compared to the material, this insulating material provide, it is something analogous to an air gap. Since these insulating materials are distributed throughout the core, we could say that such material will have a distributed air gap. So once you have a distributed air gap, what will happen? It's the relative permeability of the material reduces. So once the relative permeability of the material reduces, that is something which is not desirable, but one desirable thing is happening, that you could have a high DC bias current capability. So what do you mean by the DC bias current? Hello? Whether this screen is visible?
Yes,
Okay.
it's visible. Yeah.
Okay. Let me consider a simple converter, which is known to be the boost converter, where we wanted to design a inductor for this boost converter. Okay, if you don't know the boost converter, let us think that there is an input voltage and one inductor and one switch. The output side, let us have another voltage. I'm not drawing exactly the boost converter circuit. This output voltage, let us consider it is greater than V. So this is the switch S. So when the switch S is on, what will happen? The circuit looks like this. Am I right? So this input voltage is completely applied across this inductor. So if you remember the inductor and the current relationship, L into dIL by dt, so the current will start to increase linearly. So if you see, the current will be starting increase linearly with a slope V in divided by L. And when you open the switch, your equivalent circuit will be, the inductor will be connected across your output, where output have a voltage V out. Since V out is more than V in, this net voltage coming across the input inductor is negative. So this inductor current started to reduce linearly with a slope of V in minus V naught divided by L. And this process will be happening in any power electronics converter, AC-DC converter. Due to the switching, this process will be happening. The inductor current looks like this in most of the conventional DC-DC converters. So if you see this switching waveform or current to the inductor over one switching cycle, so there is two things you could see here. One is the inductor. Let us say this is the zero axis. This is inductor current with respect to the time. So there is a definite average value for this inductor current. You can find out this is the average value of the inductor current. Also, there is a ripple. We can call it as a delta IL. So there is two parts, an average value IL, capital IL, and a ripple delta IL. And if it is a steady state, the delta IL is basically divided into two halves. So the peak value, this peak value of the inductor current at steady state is given by the average value plus the delta IL divided by 2. So DC bias means what? DC bias means the DC current flowing through the inductor. So this average value is present, and this average value of the current is known to be the DC bias current. And this DC bias current may cause saturation. Why it is getting saturated? If you don't have any DC bias current, that means there is no DC component in our inductor current. In that time, if you see our BH curve will be like this. And it may be saturating somewhere here. So this is the point. My inductor is getting saturated. So usually, since this permeability of the core is very high, this saturation is happening at a very small current. If you see the slope, this is given by 1 by permeability of the core, so reluctance of the core. Even though this is a B and H curve, the H can be proportional to N into I, and B is given by or it can be represented in terms of flux, right? The flux density. So it is proportional to the flux. If you take area of the cross section constant, so it is proportional to the flux. So if you see a simple diagram, let us have a magnetic core, and we are putting some winding on this core. This is the current I is flowing, and this is the number of turns. So there will be a flux will be set up in the core. The flux is given by MMF divided by the reluctance of your core. So that is a very basic relationship. And the reluctance of the core is given by the mean magnetic path length. The mean magnetic path length, that is the smallest length path which is taken by the flux. So mean magnetic path length divided by the permeability of the core and area cross section of the core. Okay, this is the area cross section of the core. This can be represented in our equivalent diagram, equivalent electrical network. MMF is given by N into I if you have N turns and the current I is flowing. And the reluctance of the core can be represented as R suffix C. And a flux phi is flowing, and phi is obtained by MMF divided by reluctance. Now, if you introduce an air gap, okay, now the thing is that reluctance of the core, reluctance of a Farad core is very small. Reluctance of the Farad offered by the Farad core is very small because it is having a high permeability. Now, if you introduce an air gap, what will happen? If you introduce an air gap, so sorry for my drawing, I'm introducing one air gap. The same system, I have introduced an air gap having width Lg. And once you introduce the air gap, there is two reluctance. One is reluctance offered by the core, another is the reluctance offered by the air gap. Reluctance offered by the air gap and the reluctance offered by the core, that can be find out. Reluctance offered by the core is given by the core mean magnetic path length divided by the permeability of the core, or mu into area of cross section. Reluctance of the air gap can be find out. The air gap length Lg divided by mu naught into AC. And you could see the inductance. The inductance can be represented as N phi divided by I, where I is the current flowing through the inductor, or it can be, or where flux can be represented by Ni divided by reluctance, MMF divided by reluctance. So if you put this in here and with small rearrangement, you could find out the inductance is proportional to the square of the number of turns divided by the reluctance. So when there is no air gap, the inductance was given by N square by reluctance of the core. Now we have an air gap introduced. Once you have introduced an air gap, our equivalent circuit, the same MMF Ni, but you have two reluctance paths. One is reluctance of the core, another is reluctance of the air gap. And then the inductance will be given by N square divided by reluctance of the core plus reluctance of the gap, or N square divided by okay. Now, what is the value of mu naught? Mu naught is usually in the range of 4 pi. It is 4 pi into 10 raised to minus 7, whereas mu is the relative permeability of the material, which is given by mu naught into mu r, which will be quite high. So this term will be negligible when compared to this term. So this can be omitted when you introduce the air gap. The reluctance of the magnetic path, the reluctance offered by the core material will be negligible compared to the reluctance offered by the air gap. So in that case, we could easily write the inductance is directly proportional to square of the number of turns divided by the reluctance of the gap. So one important aspect of introducing the air gap is that now the inductor is become completely independent of the core reluctance, or it is independent of the core shape. So inductance now not depending on which core you are using, what will be the shape of the core, it is irrelevant. It is only depends upon what is the air gap length and number of turns. So introducing air gap makes our inductor independent of core geometry. And also there is one more thing. I could write if you okay, I already drawn here. Now if you see the BH curve once again, when there is no air gap, the BH curve is saturating, let us say at a current I1. Now, if you introduce the air gap, the reluctance of the complete reluctance of your system will be the reluctance of the air gap plus reluctance of the core. So in that time, if you draw the BH curve, it will be shifting like this because the slope has changed. Even though the B saturation, the saturation flux density remains same, but the current at which the saturation occurs is changed. Now, if you introduce the air gap, the inductor will be get saturated. The core gets saturated at current I2, where I2 is like quite larger than current I1. So the slope of this curve will be given by 1 by RC plus RG. So there is two advantages in which we could we will get by introduce the air gap. One is we could delay the saturation. So previously without air gap, the inductor might have got saturated at the current I1. Now once you introduce the air gap, you can have a higher current in the sense higher DC current flowing through the inductor without saturation, without getting saturated. Second thing, the complete system becomes almost independent of the shape of the core, geometry of the core, and the material we are using. It is only depends upon the length of the air gap. Inductance is depend only on the length of the air gap. These are the two advantages we are getting, but there is a big disadvantage is that once you introduce the air gap, the inductance rapidly reduces because the air gap reluctance is quite high. Inductance is, you can say it is almost proportional to N square divided by Rg. Since Rg is much larger than Rc, the inductance rapidly reduces. So once you introduce the air gap, you may require a slightly double, you have to wind more conductors or more winding to obtain the same inductance as previous. But the advantage is that you are now able to safely send a large amount of current. It can safely send a large amount of current. So that is why the air gap is quite important. So if you see the toroidal core, we cannot provide an air gap. If you wanted to provide an air gap, you have to cut the core. So that is quite difficult. So that is the reason if you are using a toroidal core to make an inductor, if it have a at a steady state, if it have a definite DC current, this DC current will make the inductor saturate, the core saturate. But when it comes to the powdered core, the manufacturers have done wisely. They have added some insulating material while making the powder core itself. So it will provide a distributed air gap. So throughout the core, there will be the insulating material will be distributed. So it have a net effect of giving a distributed air gap. So this powdered core is can be used for making inductors which can tolerate high DC bias current, but with a price of reduced relative permeability and with the price of large number of turns to obtain the same inductance without air gap. And another advantage of the powdered iron core is that it have a high saturation flux density, around 1 Tesla, whereas the ferrite core having around 0.45, that is the maximum. Here it is almost double, and also having a high Curie temperature. So basically, this powdered iron cores are available either as a toroidal shape or E-core. But there are some categories of powdered iron core which are known to be the Sandust and MVP core. They are available both in toroidal and doubly shape. So I'm not going through different category or material grade of the powder iron core. So in our local market, in the sense in our country, iron powdered and Sandust cores are more available, but these cores you may need to import. And basically, this magnetic core, that soft magnetic materials, and those magnetic core are basically manufactured in China. So they have the monopoly nowadays, even though we have sufficient ferrite manufacturers. But when it comes to the powdered iron core, it is completely a good amount of world goods is coming from the China regarding this core. So these two core, you may get it from our local electronic shops, but if you wanted to use this kind of core, you may need to import. Recently, okay. So we will be seeing some of a fair comparison between these core. So if you see the ferrite core, that ferrite core can be operated in up to 2 megahertz, but the Curie temperature is quite small, and the saturation flux density is in the range of 0.4. Whereas the powdered iron core, you can see more than 1 Tesla, but the frequency of operation may be limited. So I'm not explaining completely. You could see the PPTs later. Okay, if you see the DC bias performance, that is quite important when you are making an inductor. The ferrite core may saturate very fast because it cannot handle much DC current, whereas the high flux core which is suitable for high DC bias current. When it comes to the core loss comparison, the ferrite is the winner. It virtually don't have much core losses, whereas the iron powder core having a large core loss. So if you wanted to reduce the core loss in your system, in your inductor or transformer, you have to go with the ferrite core. So when it comes to the cost, the ferrite and iron powdered cores are available in a cheaper price, whereas MVP core is costly. For example, if a doubly ferrite core, you may get a complete pair, you may get less than 200 rupees. The same size MVP core, you may have to pay around the 2000. So that is the difference, 10 times money price difference. That might be the reason in our country the ferrite and iron powdered core are more popular than MVP core, even though it have a better characteristics. But when you are making something related to military grade equipment, the cost is not a matter. The reliability is a matter. In that case, we can go for MVP core. Also, the temperature stability we have seen, the ferrite is having the low Curie temperature compared to other core. So let us see how we can design an inductor based on this core. So I will be discussing about designing an inductor using the ferrite core only. So a few things that we have to keep in mind while designing an inductor. One is we should fix our inductance value. So the inductance value, definitely, if you know the inductance value, then only we can design the inductor. And also, we should know what is the peak value of the current flowing through the inductor. And we should also know the RMS value of the current flowing through the inductor. These are the three quantities which is required to design a high frequency inductor. One is the inductance, the peak value of the winding current flowing through the inductor, and another is the RMS value of the current flowing through the inductor. Why these two RMS value and peak values are important? As you see, if you see the inductor current, once the inductor current increases, along with this inductor current, basically if you see the BH curve, our flux also increases. So if this inductor current is quite large, it may the flux in the system also increases and it may get saturated. So the peak value of the current flowing through the inductor also restrict the saturation. So we should see the peak value of the current because it is directly proportional to the saturation. And why this RMS current comes to the picture? Because on the core you need to wind using some copper wires. So this RMS current is something which is related to the heat produced or in the copper losses. So the copper losses is also one of the constraints. If your RMS current is quite large and the resistance of the wire is you have large number of turns, then it will generate lot of heat, and the heat will basically reduces the once the heat increases, we have already seen that the flux density reduces. Secondly, maybe the insulation may dissolve, there may be a sudden short circuit, etc. So this RMS current and the peak value of the current, that two things that we have to take into account while designing an inductor. And once you know these two things, the most obvious step is to select a magnetic core. So you could select any core. So we have restricted our discussion on selecting the core based on the ferrite. So when we are designing a ferrite based core, first thing we have to design, we have to restrict what should be the maximum flux density that we can make use. We have seen the maximum flux density of the ferrite core is around 0.45 Tesla. But if you design at 0.45 Tesla, even with a slight increase in temperature, the flux density started to reduce. So we may be operating our converter in the range of 60 to 70 degrees. 60 to 70 degrees. So 0.45 Tesla, if you choose as a design criteria, definitely our inductance value when actually operating the converter will be less. So as a rule of thumb, one of the good selection is select Bmax in the range of 0.2 to 0.25 Tesla. So that is one of the rule of thumb you can follow, even though it can carry up to, it can you can operate up to 0.45, better to operate at 0.2 to 0.25, considering the temperature limit. So based on all these things, we could select our core. So to selecting the core or designing the inductor, we have two popular methods. One is known to be the area product method. Another is known to be the KG method or core geometrical constant method. So both these methods are quite popular in our industry. And today lecture, I will be concentrating on area product method. You can get it, enough resources are available regarding the core geometrical constant method also. Both will finally give almost similar result. So that will not make a much problem which method you are using. And the core geometrical constant method, if you are using, you may get more control on the losses, the copper losses, and especially the copper loss will be, you can predetermine. Whereas area product method, sometimes you have to measure and get it, the loss, copper loss common. Both are almost, end result will be almost similar. So I will be restricting on area product method. So we have to select the core. To select the core, what should be the size of the core? Now we are selecting a ferrite based core. So we should know what should be the size of the core. The size of the core is selected based on the area product. We call it as an area product. And area product is nothing but the multiplication of the core cross-sectional area and window area. This is a core cross-sectional area. This is window area. So if you're wondering what you mean by the core cross-sectional area, let us consider a double E core. Let us consider a double E core. So two double E core will form one magnetic material. So the core cross-sectional area is this area, that is AC. That is the core cross-sectional area. Window area is this complete area, window area. So window area is the area occupied for the winding. So we need to wind. Once you select the core, we need to wind with a conducting material, usually a copper wire we will be using. So how you wind, you can wind on the limb. Usually if you want a distributed, symmetrical operation, we will be winding on the middle limb. The winding will be done on the middle limb. So it is always advisable not to wind directly on the core, because once the conductor is started to conduct current, the core get heated up. And also this ferrite core, if you use the ferrite core, it is quite brittle. Even a small stress is enough to crack the core. So better don't wind on the core. So instead of winding directly on the core, we will be using the transformer coils or formers. We call it as a bobbin. Either we call it as a bobbin or former. So bobbin or former is a non-conducting insulating material, basically made up of plastics or cardboard, etc. So that will be kept it here around this middle limb. And on this former, we will be winding our wires. Okay. So the window area is this area where the windings are occupied. And in fact, you cannot use this complete window area for our design. 100% of the window area we cannot make use. One thing is that already we are putting a bobbin. Once you put a bobbin, this much area is occupied by the bobbin. So once, let us say this is the bobbin. Once you put the bobbin, some area is lost. Now you may have to put the wires, right? You may have to put the windings. Let us represent the winding like this. The current direction I am marking like this. Let us put this is the winding. So once one set of windings are over, we have to provide some kind of an insulation here. Usually this insulation is provided by some masking tape. So once one layer of masking tape is done, again we will be winding on this the second layer till we get the sufficient number of inductance. So this process will continue. So even though you have a large number of free space for accommodating the winding, in practice we cannot make use of the complete space, because some part is used by the bobbin, some part is used for the insulation, and some of the area need to be kept it for the natural cooling, because you cannot connect a fan to the inductor or something. Usually we will connect a forced cooling system for the complete circuit. We cannot give only for an inductor one special fan. So we have to provide some good amount of space for the natural cooling also. So in general, this window area will be that amount which we can use for our actual practice is lesser than the actual area. So that fraction of amount is known to be the window utilization factor, KW. Window utilization factor, KW. So for a round conductor, if you are using a copper wire, a round conductor, KW is in the range of 0.3 to 0.5. 0.5 means KW 0.5 means only 50% of the available window area we could use for winding. Remaining 50% will be occupied by the insulating materials, bobbins, etc. So that is the meaning of KW. So area product is nothing but area of this window as well as area of this core. Since the inductance, we already seen two constraints. That one, we have to restrict this, we should know this peak value of the current flowing through the inductor winding and RMS value of the current flowing through the inductor winding. These two things will form a restriction. One is related to the saturation and another is related to the conducting copper losses. So based on that, I'm not going to the derivations. Based on that, you could find out the area product AP, which is given by AC into AW, and that is given by the inductance which we required multiplied by the peak value of the current flowing through the windings of the inductor multiplied with the RMS value of the current divided by KW. KW is the window utilization factor that we have seen now, the maximum flux density BM and current density J. So usually the KW is in the range of 0.3 to 0.5 and BM we already choose around the range of 0.2 Tesla to 0.25 Tesla for a ferrite core. And J is the current density. Current density means it is in terms of RMS value of the current, right? I RMS divided by area or the diameter, area of your conductor size. So usually it is in the range of 3 to 5 ampere per mm square for a bare conductor. If a naturally cooled bare conductor, the current density can be taken in the area in the range of 3 to 5 ampere per mm square or 3 into 10 raised to 6 ampere per meter square if you convert it into meter. So the area product of a core can be calculated by knowing this value. Once you know this area product, then things are quite easy. Just go to a magnetic core table. So this is somewhat old magnetic core table. The recent or core table with a large number of other cores included, other cores also available. So I think it is visible, right? So there is a magnetic core table is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you see a magnetic core table, you can see a lot of core. Core numbers are given. Part numbers are given. So P stand for the port core, E stand for doubly core, U stand for the U core or C core, T stand for the toroidal core, and you can see the mean magnetic length. You could see the mean magnetic length, core cross-sectional area, window area, area product, etc. So what we require, we have to find out the area product of the core, and we should see which core or which part number meeting our area product requirement. So once you select the core based on the area product, then we could easily find out the other parameters for our design. So the first step is, as I told, to find out the area product. So let us say we have find out the area product, then look the core table and find out a core which have a larger area product than we calculated. This one is the calculated one. And now we have to look into the magnetic table and find out a suitable core which have an area product larger than the calculated one. Once you find out the area product larger than the calculated one, the next step is to find out how many turns we should wound so that we will get the required inductance. So that can be easily find out by this expression. The number of turns depends upon the inductance, the peak value of the current, divided by Bm and AC. Bm is the maximum flux density. We restricted up to 0.25 Tesla. AC is the cross-sectional area. Now the difference is here. Whatever be the for the selected core, whatever the core you selected, that core's cross-sectional area we have to plug it here, and we will find out the number of turns. Sometimes the number of turns will come in the fraction. For example, 17.35. So it's better to take either 17 or 18. That depends. There will be a small variations only. So whenever you are getting number of turns in terms of fraction, you can have a full number, 17 or 18. Or if you are interested for a half turn, that is not completely turning the winding, you can have a half turn. In that case, you can get a 17.5 also. But better, we could choose a nearest whole number. So once we select the number of turns, so we have already what we have done. We already know the value of inductance to be measured. We know the current flowing through the inductor, peak and RMS value of the current, and we know which material to be chosen. Usually the ferrite core is widely available, so we will be using a ferrite core. Based on that, we find out the area product. Then we look into the core magnetic table and find out suitable core and note down the core cross-sectional area of that suitable core and find out the number of turns required. Once you know the number of turns, now what we require to find out what should be the air gap. What should be the air gap we need to give. So if you neglecting the fringing, that is fringing in the sense, if this air gap length is very small, all the flux will be flowing through this. But in the actual practice, some of the flux will be bulging out. So we call it as a fringing phenomena. So if this air gap length is very small, the fringing can be neglected. So if you neglect the fringing, this relationship you could use for finding the air gap length required for our required to be provided in the core. But if you wanted more accuracy, then with fringing you could use this. L is the mean magnetic path length of the core. Mu c is the core permeability. But even though it is in the millimeters, it does not make much difference if the required air gap is very small. But if you have a large air gap, this fringing effect cannot be neglected. We may include this fringing effect while calculating the air gap. So how to provide this air gap? There are two ways that you could provide the air gap. One is, okay, let us see the same W core. So air gap means between the core, right? So between the limbs. So usually what we will do, we will provide this insulating papers. Even though this is not an air gap actually, but in actual practice, we may be providing some insulating paper here in the same dimension of your core face. We will be providing an insulating paper. So you need to cut the insulating paper and insert them in the same dimension. For example, if you wanted a 3 mm air gap, so this 1 mm, this is 1 mm, this is 1 mm. So the 3 mm will be distributed around all the limbs. That is one method. If you have an ungapped core, okay, first of all, I forgot to tell, manufacturers will be given or selling the core in two categories. One is gapped core and another is ungapped core. So when you are using an ungapped core means without air gap you can use. Very tightly you can pack the core. So if you are purchasing an ungapped core, you have to provide an air gap by providing an insulating paper. But some manufacturers are selling the gapped core. So the data sheet itself is giving what is the gap provided. In the gapped core, if you see a gapped core, in practice, if you see a gapped core, maybe only the middle limb there will be a gap. Other two limbs, it is completely if you put a two-stably core, only the middle limb you have a gap. So this gap length is always mentioned by the manufacturer. But the problem is you cannot alter the gap length. You cannot alter the gap length. If you wanted to alter, what you can give? You have to provide a more insulating paper here. So that also generates some more air gap in other limbs. So when you are designing your inductor, and if you find out I need this much air gap, the best way is look for a core which already having this much air gap given by the manufacturer. If such cores are not available, better to choose an ungapped core and externally give air gap by providing some insulating papers. And in most of our laboratory application, we will be purchasing only ungapped core, because while student is designing some inductors for particular application, there is a high chance the air gap will be different for different applications and different inductance value. So we could customize our air gap by providing the insulating paper. So ungapped core is sufficient for our laboratory and research purpose application. Now, once you find out the core, number of turns and air gap, now we have to find out what should be the size of my conductor. I need to wound by using a conductor. So that we need to find out. So that will be provided by this relationship, that is depends upon the current density. And the current density for a bare conductor, I already mentioned, it is 3 ampere to 5 ampere per mm square. Per millimeter square, you can have a 3 ampere to 5 ampere if you are using a bare conductor. If you have a force, some fan or something which is giving enough cooling, then you can increase this current density up to 7 or 8 amps per mm square. That is not a problem. But most of the time in our laboratory purpose or a research purpose, we may making our inductor which may not be working 24 into 7 hours. So in that case, a bare conductor is sufficient. Once you find out, you already knowing the IRMS, since it is a bare conductor, you fix your current density around 3 ampere or 5 ampere, then you can find out what should be the area of the conductor required. Once you know this area of the conductor, you could find out this corresponding conductor from the wire table. So we have a wire table. So you can see the wire table. The conductor size will be given in SWG, the standard wire gauge, and the diameter of the conductor, area of the conductor, etc. will be given. So you could select a standard wire, required conductor size from the wire table and wound your inductor. And you have to be, there will be two kind of wire table. One is mentioned as AWG, American wire gauge, and another is SWG, that is standard wire gauge. In our Commonwealth countries, since we are following the British system, we have SWG is common. But when it comes to the products or the North America, it will be AWG. But even if you got something wire table of AWG, you can easily convert it to SWG. There is a conversion factor, which I don't remember exactly, but you could convert. But there is one more thing that you need to consider, that when your switching frequency increases, that frequency of operation is increases, this conductor size, selection of this conductor is quite important. At low frequency, the current through the conductor will be equally distributed throughout this conductor. But at high frequency, what will happen? We will have a phenomenon called skin effect. So the current started to flow only to the surface of your conductor, to the surface of the conductor. So only through this small area, the current will be flowing. So this resistance offered by the conductor will be very high. So the thickness or this distance is known to be the skin depth. Skin depth delta. So for a copper conductor, it will be, you can easily find out the skin depth. And skin depth will vary, depends upon the conductor material, because it also depends upon the resistivity of the material also. So if you know the parameters of a material, you can put it and find out what is the skin depth you can expect. So when you using an inductor for a high frequency and you selected a wire gauge uh, having a having a required SWG, and once you selected the wire, and once you wound, one problem may come that the resistance offered by the conductor is quite higher because of the skin effect. So what you have to do here, since you have a skin depth comes to the picture, you note down the value of the skin depth. Uh, you note down the value of the skin depth. Once you know the skin depth, select a conductor whose diameter is smaller than this, whose diameter is smaller than this. And let us say this diameter is 10 mm, and my skin depth is happen to be 2 mm. I select a conductor whose diameter is 2 mm. Since I need a current to flow which corresponding to 10 mm, what I should use such 5 conductors in parallel. So we call it as a bundle conductor, but in order to reduce the EMI issues, we need to make this conductor like this. It has to twisted like this, so that just like our transmission line. So like that, things also need to be taken into account while designing a conductor. I mean, while selecting the conductor. So in general, when it comes to the high frequency application, we will be using the Leeds wire. It is also a copper wire, but it consisting of a large number of small copper wires, and each wires are insulated from others. We call it as a Leeds wire. So if you go to the market and the Leeds wire, if you wanted to purchase a Leeds wire, usually it will be available something like this, 0.1 into 500. That means there will be 500 small strands of wires, and each wire having 0.1 mm diameter. And these 500 wires will be insulated by each other. So the current will be divided into 500 times and flow through the conductor. In fact, you can reduce the skin effect. So that is something which we need to take into the account. So I'm just briefing once again. Once you know the value of the inductance and the peak and RMS value of the current, the first step is to find out the area product. Once you find out the area product, use the core table and find out a core which have an area product larger than this. Once you've done it, you have to find out what should be the number of turns of the core, and then calculate the air gap. Then select the conductor which need to be wound. And you can also see the skin effect if you want. Usually for a copper conductor, the skin effect is given by a factor of 72 divided by root F. That means if F is increasing high, the skin depth is reducing. Finally, there will be a stage if you are operating at a megahertz range, only the surface, only the current will be flowing because the frequency is quite large. If you are using another conductor other than copper, then the skin depth can be easily found out by an expression 1 divided by square root of mu pi sigma into F. This is the conductivity, mu is the permeability, F is the frequency of operation or frequency of the current which is flowing through the inductor. So based on this, we will do a problem that we will do after a short break. Prior to that, if you have any doubt, I'm happy to discuss.
We will now break for 5 minutes and rejoin the session at 11:50 a.m.
Oh,
sir, shall we start?
Yes, sir.
Welcome back. I request the speaker, Dr. Shala Satyan, to continue the session on magnetic materials for power electronics. Over to you, sir.
Okay, so based on our discussion, I'm giving a small work. So one design example. So all of you please design an inductor, high frequency inductor, having the following specification. The inductance value is 100 microhenry and the current through the inductor is shown here. Switching frequency or the frequency by which the current is flowing through the inductor is around 100 kilohertz. And this inductor having a current ripple of 0.75 ampere delta IL, that is the difference between this peak to peak value, that is 0.75 ampere. Average value of the inductor current is 5 ampere. So the value of inductance is 100 microhenry, average value is 5 ampere, switching frequency is 100 kilohertz, and the current ripple is 0.75 ampere. Use a Farad core and find out the proper inductance. So a few things, I think since our time is left, whether we should give time for people to solve or I could solve.
Actually, if you're able to complete by 12:30, then you can involve them, let them solve.
Okay, let me then. Okay, let me show the design step.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Karthik.
Yeah. No, try
The
to complete
participants
by
are given
12:30.
unmuting
So
rights.
Accordingly, you can decide.
Okay. Anyway, the question is very simple. You have to design a high frequency inductor whose inductance value is 100 microhenry, and the current through the inductor is given like this. It is a switching waveform, and one cycle is the switching frequency is 100 kilohertz. And there is an average value of the current. We call it as a DC bias current, that is a 5 ampere, and the inductor current have a ripple which is superimposed on this average value, and that is given by 0.75 ampere. So the design steps are given here. Okay, okay. So what I will do, I will solve, and we will see how to select an inductor. So we have given a 100 microhenry inductance. The peak, we have to find out the peak value of the current. Also, we have to find out the RMS value of the current. And the question says we should use a Farad core. So we have to find out which core need to be used. So from our wave shape, we know the average value of the current, that is around 5 amps. Now we also know the delta IL, the ripple in the current is a 0.75 ampere. So now I could find out the peak value, that is average value plus half of the delta IL. So that will be 5 plus 0.75 divided by 2. That comes around 5.375 ampere. Now the question is, what should be the RMS value of the current? That you can find out. This value is delta IL, I average minus delta IL by 2. This value is I average plus delta IL by 2. And you know this value also. From this waveform, you can find out easily the average value, RMS value. Or otherwise, you can find out the area and do that work. Once I'm not spending time on it, for such a waveform, you can find out the RMS value, like the square of the average plus you will get 1 by 12 times delta IL square. That means square root of 5 square plus 1 by 12 times 0.75 square. It's around 5.01 something. So let me take it as a 5 ampere itself, since this is very close to 5 ampere once you calculate. So I'm taking it as a 5 ampere. If you want more accuracy, you can add 5.01 or 5.02. So that will not make much difference. So I'm taking the calculated RMS value approximated as 5 ampere. Now, since we are making a converter to work in our country, where our ambient temperature can go up to 42 degrees Celsius, depends upon the operation, then our actual converter temperature can go up to 60-70 degrees Celsius while operating. So I could restrict my maximum flux density in the range of 0.2 to 0.5 0.2 to 0.25 Tesla. Let me select the maximum flux density as 0.2 Tesla. Now I should select what should be the current density J through the conductor. As I told, the current density can vary. If it is a bare conductor, it can be in the range of 3 to 5 ampere per mm square. So I'm little bit a conservative design I'm taking. I'm taking a 3 ampere per mm square as the current density, or 3 into 10 raised to 6 ampere per meter square. Now I should take a KW, the window utilization factor. For a naturally cooled round conductor, it is in the range of 0.3 to 0.5. You can choose 0.5 or you can choose 0.3 or any value in between. Let me choose a 0.35 as 0.35 as the KW value. Now we could find out the area product. The first step is to find out the area product of the core. That is given by AC into AW. We don't know what is the AC and AW value, but we know this is given by L into IP IRMS divided by the window utilization factor, the maximum saturation flux density, and the current density J. So all these factors we have put. We know the value of inductor, that is inductance, that is 100 microhenry. The current is 5.375 amps. IRMS current is almost equal to 5. KW is 0.2 Tesla. Sorry, KW is 0.35, which I choose. The flux density, the maximum flux density is 0.2 Tesla. And J is something which I choose as 3 into 10 raised to 6 amps per meter square. Everything in the standard unit. And you will get something in meter raised to 4. But if you see our data sheet, or what you can see, this wire table, usually it will be given in mm raised to 4. So something in the meter raised to 4, you need to convert it to mm raised to 4. So that you can multiply with the 10 raised to 12. So you will get something in the mm raised to 4. So once you calculate it, I think it comes around 12797.61 mm raised to 4. Now we find out the value of area product required for our specification. Now we have to look on the core table and find out a suitable core. So if you see the core table, the area product is already given. So you can look at here. Area product is already given here, but it is in the mm raised to 4. But whatever in the table, that you need to multiply with the 10 raised to 4. That is the way they represented the table. So you could use any core. So let us, since our area product is 1.2, so, okay, 12,797 mm raised to 4, you should choose a core larger than this. So either you can choose a core P36/22, which have an area product of 20,000. That is quite larger, right? 20,000 mm raised to 4. Or you can find out any other core. Okay, there is another core whose area product is coming around 18,000 range. So let me choose this core. This core is given by, part number is given by E36/1811, whose area product is 18,470. So that is larger than 12,000 or 13,000. So that some in between I don't find anything. So let us choose this core. So the selected core is from the core table. You can select a core E36/18/11. So when it comes to the core terminology, let us take an course made core. You can see this is a different core, but you could see this core having a different terminology used. E42/21/20. Similarly, E36/18/11. So three terminology, I mean three numbers are given. So let us take a random core table and see what are the things available by the manufacturer. So if you see any core, there is some data are given. One is LE. You can see LE is equal to 97 mm. That is the mean magnetic path length. Another is A suffix E. That is basically the area of the core. That is 234 mm square. Similarly, the volume of the core also given. And E42, the 42 means the length of the core. You can see here, this is the length of the core that is given by E42. And okay, that I think better I should go here. If you take a core, 36 means this length. This length is 36. 18 means this length. 11 means this length. So like that, the core manufacturer will name the core. So you could see, you could say 36 means it's the this horizontal length, 18 is the vertical length, 11 is the width of the core. The core face, this width is 11. So like that, core will be manufactured. I mean, the core nomenclature will be provided, and also you could see the material. You could see what are the part number for ungapped core and gapped core. So if you're using an ungapped core, you have to provide external air gap, and the materials are there, different grade material. For different grade materials, the permeability will be different, and saturation flux density, you could see it is around 0.32 Tesla. Okay, even though we can go up to 0.45, but this manufacturer is limited, the saturation flux density is 0.32. So our design of 0.2, selection of 0.2 is also good. And the core losses also given at a different frequency range. It is very small, less than 11.5 watt per sec. So that is also. And manufacturers sometimes give gapped core. So if you see the gapped core, once manufacturer given the gapped core, it is necessary they should give another terminology called AL value. So AL value must be given for a gapped core. So you could see if you are choosing a core having the part number this first core, then it can have a maximum air gap of 0.25. So that is fixed. You cannot get lesser than that. Maybe you can increase the air gap by adding the external papers and having a 1229 AL value. So what do you mean by AL value? AL value it will be given in nanohenry or millihenry, depends upon the manufacturer. So AL value, for example, this is given in the nanohenry means if you have a magnetic core and if you wound 100 terms, 10,000 terms, then what will be the inductance? That will be given by AL value. So if you know the AL value, the number of turns can be found out by this expression. What is given in the nanohenry means 10 square divided by AL. So this AL value will be given by the manufacturer if it is a gapped core. So you could find out the number of turns for a particular value of the inductance by using the AL value. Then you don't want to find out the this number of turns calculation which we have seen in the PPT. We can directly find out from this AL value itself the number of turns. And also they will be providing if you depend upon the core manufacturers, the window area, we have used a nomenclature AW, but some of the manufacturers like EPCOs, they will be using a nomenclature AN. So AN also stands for the window area. So these data will be given, and also the suitable bobbin will be also shown. So this is the part number for the suitable bobbin for this particular core. So all these data will be given by the manufacturers. This is the manufacturer's TDK. They are basically selling through the EPCOs. EPCOs and Feroce tubes are the two, which you could say EPCOs and Feroce tube. These are the two good manufacturers of the ferrite core. In India also we have a Cosmic, a company called Cosmic. They are also providing a good ferrite core. Okay, so for our problem, we have find out the core whose part number is C36 bar 18 bar 11. So for this particular core, what will be the area, cross-sectional area? The cross-sectional area AC into 100 mm square and window area AW into 100 mm square, that are given. So the cross-sectional area is given by 131 mm square and window area is 141 mm square. These are the two values which is given for this core. So this core having cross-section area of 131 mm square and window area of 141 mm square. That we got it from our data sheet. I mean that core table. So whatever the core table which I am using is a very old one. Renewed core table with a large number of magnetic cores are available. You can check it with the manufacturer's website. Now we could find out the number of turns required. The number of turns required N is given by the inductance, the peak value of the current flowing, the flux density, and the area of the core. So inductance is 100 microhenry, peak value is 5.375, and remaining things. And here it is 131 mm square that can be converted into meter square, and it comes around 20.5 turns. So take the next whole number. We will take N is equal to 21 turns. So now we got the core. Once you got the core, purchase the bobbin for the suitable core, or you can make the bobbin by using some cardboard also. Now wound 21 turns. Now the question is, what should be the diameter, which wire I should take? So prior to that, we should find out what should be the air gap required. So air gap is given by mu naught into N square into AC divided by L, which is given by 4 pi into 10 raised to minus 7. Now the number of turns is 21, so 21 square. Area of cross section of the core is 131 mm square, that is become 10 raised to minus 6 meter square, and inductance is 100 into 10 raised to minus 6. So air gap is calculated as 0.725 mm. So it is quite very small air gap, less than 0.1 mm, I mean less than 1 mm air gap. In fact, you can give 1 mm air gap. So when you're giving 1 mm air gap, it will not have much impact because the required turns is 20.5. We already taken a 21 turns. A half turns we took. So a 0.3 mm air gap may reduce the inductance from 100 microhenry to 98 or 99. But because of the 0.5 turns, it may come again near to 100 microhenry. So that is not a big deal. So once you know the air gap, our inductor core related things are over. The next step is to find out what should be the conductor size. So the wire conductor size is given by the IRMS value of the current flowing through the conductor divided by the current density. So the max RMS current is almost equal to 5 ampere. Current density is 3 ampere. So it is given by 1.6 mm square. So we should find out a conductor whose area is 1.6 mm square from our wire table. So go to the wire table. You can see the SWG is given, diameter is given, area of the bare conductor is given. Area of the bare conductor, we should select something which is more than 1.6. Okay. SWG 17 having 1.5, SWG 16 having area is equal to 2 mm square. So that is larger than 1.6. So I could select a conductor, copper conductor, who having the wire gauge of 16 mm square, SWG 16. So I selected SWG 16. And now, depend upon the switching frequency, you could find out the skim depth. And based on the skim depth, you can reduce the conductor size. You can reduce the conductor size. I'm not going to the skin depth design. So if you wanted to reduce the skin effect, you have to find out the skin depth and select a bundle conductor whose diameter is smaller than the skin depth. And also there is another non-linearity in the sense another loss will be coming as a proximity effect that also we need to reduce it. And those things can be reduced by sandwich winding and interleaved winding, etc. At present, it is only a starting stage, so we are not discussing about improving the efficiency of inductor making. We are only seeing the preliminary step to make the inductor. So now we select the core, we select the number of turns, we select the conductor size. So now let us see about the doubly core. So two doubly core will form one complete magnetic path. So now you can see this is known to be the core bobbin or core foil. So on this top of this, we will be winding our conductor. Our 21 turns will be wound on this, and this wire will be taken out. So the bobbin manufacturers will be given a large number of leads. These leads will be given in both sides. So this wire can be easily soldered to one of the leads, and this wire also can be soldered to one of the leads, and then we can insert to the PCB. So this bobbin will be go inside this middle limb. So you can see once we made this a complete system, complete core, it will be like this. If you wanted to provide an air gap, you can provide air gap here by inserting some insulating papers, and the winding will be taken in the air gap. The thing is that if you wound completely, for example, if we are able to wound only 10 turns, but we have to make it 20 turns. Once the first layer is over, you have to provide some masking tape over it. That is also an insulating material. And over the masking tape, again, you need to wind. So once you wound, it will be looking like this. It is a copper wire we are using. So you can see the small air gap is provided. There is a small air gap is provided in between the core, and the number of turns as per our requirement we have wound, and the leads has been taken into one of this the bobbin leads, and this wire will be going into the PCB. In fact, you don't need to connect an external wire if you're making the final product, because this lead itself can be directly mounted on the PCB. But this external wire you may be using when you wanted to measure the current. For example, you can plug a current probe here and see the inductor current. In that time, you could use such a external wires. Otherwise, these external wires are not required. Only leads can be directly mounted and soldered in the PCB. And in order to make our this mechanical strength, sometime we will be putting some clamps so that this core will be properly, the mechanical strength will be enough, so that even with vibrations or some kind of movement, this air gap will not change. So now, as I told, when you're operating at a high switching frequency, a bare conductor of a single diameter we will not use. Instead, we will use a large number of small conductors which are insulated each other, We call it as a Litz wire. If you are not familiar with the word Litz wire, it is nothing but the radio antenna wire. In our radio shops, people will be selling this antenna or radio wire. So you can see this is a Litz wire. There is a large number of small conductors, and all these conductors are insulated each other. And finally, on the top of this, there will be a nylon cloth. Nylon cloth will be there, and you can just remove this nylon cloth. And when you wanted to connect this Litz wire, especially let us say instead of this copper wire, if I am using a Litz wire here, this copper wire is replaced by the Litz wire. Then at the end, when it is connecting with this pin, what we have to do, we have to completely remove this insulation. That is required because only at the end we have to remove the insulation and make it as a one conductor only at the end. At the end, we have to remove the insulation and make it as a one conductor. So the current will flow and divided into whatever be the path available. For example, 0.1 into 500, there will be 500 such a small standard wires. The current will be divided into 500 paths. And it will be twisted just like a transmission line to reduce this unwanted EMI issue. So this insulation can be removed by putting some chemicals. Or one of the good thing is that in laboratory, if you have a 50 watt soldering iron, so make the temperature around 300 degrees Celsius and then solder, automatically this insulating materials will be come out. Then you can easily solder and make it as a one conductor at the end, and that can be connected to the pin or that can be connected to a PCB. So this is something which we made in our laboratory. You could see that this is a inductor. Basically, this is a flyback inductor. This is similar to a flyback converter. So this core is WE55 core, a little bit larger core than WE36 core which we have designed. And here also we have provided air gap. So if you see this design procedure, this air gap is distributed across the three limbs, and this core is ungapped core. It is not a gapped core. Air gap is decided by me. So I already put some insulating material here. So here I am putting the bobbin. So this is the bobbin. So after the bobbin, I make the primary winding or the winding. After that, I have a insulation. So such inter-winding insulation is provided by a masking tape. So these are the masking tape which is available in our hardware shop. In fact, if you are not able to get a masking tape in our hardware shop, go to the medical shop and purchase a medical tape. Instead of a masking tape, you can use a medical tape also. So either masking tape or medical tape you can use for this insulation purpose between the layers of winding. So after one layer is over, you can put the second layer of the winding on that. And finally, if you want having a good thermal stability, for example, this particular converter which we designed, this current is flowing very large, and then this peak value of the current is reaching up to 50 ampere. So 50 ampere means it's quite high. So this air gap also quite large, so that it will not get saturated. But the problem is it may get some more copper losses because RMS value of the current also high. So in order to dissipate the heat and also to have a proper thermal stability, you have to use a polyimide. You have to use the polyimide insulating tapes, not our normal insulating tape. There is a mistake people usually do once winding the high frequency transformer. They will be winding, there will be wrapping it with our normal insulating tapes, which is usually used on our small electrical work. That is not advisable. You should use a specialized insulating tape, which is basically a polyimide material, and it is available. It is known as Kapton tape. Kapton tape. In a few years back, these tapes are not available in India. We have to export. Sorry, we have to import. Nowadays, it is available in almost all the online websites. So once you made this Kapton tape, and you can have the final. That is a This yellowish color is because of the capital T. So this is a way you could design a high frequency inductor. And these are the reference which I took. I forgot to add one more reference, that is the course materials on power electronics by Dr. Ram Narayanan. That also some of the materials are taken from that. And the magnetic material properties has been taken from the data sheet of the magnetics and these two textbooks. So if you require a very good very good insight on transformer and inductor design, this McLeman textbook is one of the Bible for this, so that you can use. When it comes to the power electronics based thing, either Ram Narayanan or Robert Erickson textbooks are quite good. When it comes to the Robert Erickson, they are not using the area product method. They will be designing the inductor based on the kg method or geometrical constant method, but both will give you almost similar result. So this is the end of the presentation. If you have any query, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, sir, for your very detailed and informative session on magnetic materials for power electronics. You have discussed different magnetic core materials used for power electronic applications like ferrite core, powder core, their properties, various design aspects. You have also explained the design of high frequency inductors using ferrite core in detail with an example. Thank you, sir. The session is now open for discussion. There are a few queries posted by the participants. I'll read out. First question is whether the material is required to operate below saturation or at saturation flux density for good performance, especially for electrical machine applications.
So we need to operate below saturation, except some specific instruments like current transformers or something. Otherwise, the materials need to be operated below saturation. Once it is saturated, it is something like a short circuit as far as electrical engineer is concerned. It will draw a large amount of current. Most of our switches will damage instantaneously.
Okay. And the second question is how to reduce the noise generated in a flyback transformer if switching is done at 60 kilohertz?
Okay. So the noise is not coming from the transformer. It is basically due to the leakage inductance of your flyback converter. So there is two methods. Either you have to reduce the leakage inductance or you have to provide some clamping. The clamping can be done either through an RCD clamping, resistor capacitor. If you see a flyback, I think the primary side looks like this, and this is a coupled inductor. Flyback transformer means it is not a transformer, it is basically an inductor which is coupled. So due to the leakage inductance, you will have a large EMI issue. So that can be clamped by connecting an RCD clamp circuit, resistance and a diode like this. If it's the low power, high power application, you may require either 2-switch flyback or a active clamp flyback that can reduce the suppression. One more thing you could do, you can add a little bit larger capacitor here that also reduces the EMI losses. I think there's a noise in the sense EMI issue. So usually when you are using a digital controller to control this generating pulses, the problem is the EMI generated due to this high switching losses. If you see this switch voltage, it will not be like this. It will be like this. So this oscillation is happening at a high frequency. For example, if you are using a MOSFET that already having a parasitic capacitance, which is in the range of picofarad, and the leakage inductance usually in the range of microfarad. So this leakage inductance and this capacitor will form a resonance circuit. So that resonance frequency is given in the terms of Lk into Cp into 2 pi. That will be in the range of 1 megahertz or more. So that will produce lot of noises and EMI. And usually that will be propagated to your digital controller if you are using a digital controller. So one way is to provide a clamping circuit, that is a passive clamping, or provide an active clamping that including one switch and one additional switch, or connect a large capacitor across it. Once you're connecting a large capacitor, you will have a large switching loss. Efficiency will reduce. So that is one problem. So my suggestion is, if you are not worried much about efficiency, go with an RCD clamp.
Okay, sir. And another question is whether core loss will be high for high frequency application, that is ferrite core.
Core loss will be high, but when it comes to the ferrite, compared to all other materials, the core loss is very small. That is why we are using ferrite core for high frequency application. If you are using a normal transformer core, the core loss will be quite large. Ferrite, if you see the compared to the other magnetic material, if you see the BH curve, it is very narrow, whereas other will be very large. So the core loss provided by the a good designed transformer or inductor by using a ferrite core will be less than 1 milliwatt to 2 milliwatt, or maybe maximum it will go a 5 milliwatt. Whereas if you're designing a flyback converter or any converter of a 500 watt, let us say, then a core losses of 1 or 5 milliwatt is essentially negligible. So that is the beauty when it's using a ferrite core. Similar result you will get from MDP core also.